your allotted time and assure that you have time for discussion as well. This is one of the most exciting sessions we think of the week, and the best of notes is, we hope you'll find that it is the best of notes. We have wonderful speakers from the United States and from international sites who I think will fill your day with interesting videos and discussion. The first speaker today, someone who is going to, I hope, put this all in perspective for us and to give us a voice of reason and wisdom, someone who's been involved with the notes revolution from its beginning and has been a leader in the organization of all of this, and that's Dr. David Rattner. David's going to talk a little bit about NOSCAR.
Thanks, Jeff, and I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for getting up early this morning and coming to this session. This will probably be the driest of the talks this morning, but I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes talking about terminology because I think that sometimes people confuse notes, NOSCAR, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the structure, where the money is and where it isn't. So I apologize for being basic, but I think it's a good way to start a course. Let's make sure we're all talking the same language. So what is NOTES? NOTES is an acronym, the initials for natural orifice, transluminal, note it's transluminal, not endoluminal, endoscopic, and surgery. I think surgery is a very important part of NOTES because what most NOTES procedures do is intended ultimately to be therapeutic as well as diagnostic. Now, what is NOSCAR? It took a while to come up with this particular acronym. I think it was about 3 martinis and in 12 people, so I guess that's 36 martinis before we finally could come up with this. And it stood for the Natural Orifice Surgery Committee or Consortium for Assessment and Research. And the idea when this term was coined was that there'd be some oversight and organization to the notes field rather than making this the wild, wild west with everyone going off in a million different directions. So try to provide some framework to develop notes. If you remember back in 2004, 2005, this was a crazy idea that some people felt had some promise, others felt was very dangerous, and many of the people of my generation and Jeff's generation had lived through the laparoscopic cholecystectomy experience, where many people had gone to a weekend course, gone and performed lap choles, and created some pretty devastating injuries. And the key driver to creating NOSCAR was the fact that some people had a belief that notes could be very good and beneficial for the patients, but that if there were mishaps along the way, that regulatory agencies would shut it down and prevent the development of notes. And that's really why the two societies, SAGES and ASGE, got together and created this structure. Now, so what is NOSCAR other than a cool name? It actually is a virtual community. NOSCAR exists only because SAGES and ASGE provided people who would commit their time. They actually don't donate much money, but they hold the money. So NOSCAR doesn't have a budget. It doesn't have a treasury. It doesn't have bylaws, members, and things like that. It's not a society, but it is a networking function in a virtual community that has 3 primary functions, which I'll talk about in a second. In the first of all, it fosters research, and I'll talk about the research portfolio in just a second. Secondly, it maintains a registry of all the notes cases done, certainly within the States and I hope globally. I'm going to try to make that point in a sec. And then third, it holds meetings and convenes the interested parties to get together and exchange information. Most of the information that you need or could know about NOSCAR is at the website, which I suspect most of you have visited. We try to keep it updated as well as we can. Now, this is the organizational chart because I think this will help you understand the virtual nature of what it really is. And it needs to be read sort of from the bottom up. So underlying all of NOSCAR is the money, and the money is held in the ASGE Foundation account. It doesn't really show up on the bottom line of SAGES or of ASGE. Money is controlled by the board of those two societies. It is not controlled by Rob Hawes, myself, or even Jeff Ponsky. It really is held by the SAGES and ASGE boards. Now, SAGES and ASGE appoint 6 members each to create the joint committee. This is somewhat unique in that two societies would have a committee that reports jointly. And this is the critical group that makes the decisions in NOSCAR. And then the NOSCAR functions itself are carried out by these 3 committees. There's a research committee, which is chaired by Mike Coachman from the ASGE and Stephen Schweitzberg from SAGES. And this committee does the grant reviews, assigns priorities. It's peer-reviewed. People who review the grants generally cannot have their own grants in the running. I think it's a very clean process. We've modeled it after an NIH study section. There's a meeting committee, which I chair, and I'll talk a little bit about our next meeting in a second. And then the registry committee, which is chaired by Rob Hawes and Lena Kaitan. And as of today, you should be able to go to the NOSCAR website and register your cases. We worked very hard to get this up and running. It's been difficult to do so, but it is going live today. One question I want to address about registering cases is the question of IRB approval. IRB approval for registering your cases varies from one institution to another. In general, you do not need IRB approval to enter a case into this database. It is HIPAA compliant. However, if you want to mine the database and do research on the data, you do need IRB approval. And if you have questions about this, come see me. Rob will be here later and ask him. But that's the most confusing issue about this. It's really self-explanatory once you go to the website. In terms of meetings, the first meeting was invitation only, held in Scottsdale, much more successful than we had ever anticipated. Last year we met in Boston, had 400 registrants. This year we're going back out west, and we plan to alternate east-west, east-west as long as this continues. And so this year the meeting will be held at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco, July 10th to 12th. The meeting is going to focus on working groups. And so if you're coming to the meeting, I'd urge you to look at the options for working groups, sign up for them. That participation will be somewhat limited and will occur at the beginning of the meeting. The program is at the NOSCAR website. The second focus of the meeting is going to be on international notes. Groups from Europe, Canada, Asia will all give separate reports emphasizing the scope of notes. There probably will be a live surgery demo and also a technique demo, but there will not be necessarily a hands-on lab where you can go to the lab like we did last year. Instead, we're going to provide some demo and teaching in that format. I think it will be as exciting, if not more, than last year, and I'd urge you to strongly consider attending and, as I said, register at the website. Now, how about the research? One of the things we've been very fortunate and successful at is raising money for research. And there have been 4 major corporate contributors, and they're listed here. And the last contributor actually is not an industry player. It's an organization called CIMMYT, which is Boston-based and linked to the U.S. Department of Defense Telemedicine and Advanced Technology Research Command called TATRIC. And in fact, they are the largest single supporter of NOSCAR. The total industrial support is $2.75 million, and CIMMYT has kicked in almost $3 million. So overall, there's well over $5.5 million that's been invested in research that is not specifically device development, but is in the fundamental problems felt to be associated with notes that were identified in our original white paper in 2005. There's a misperception, and I want to dispel it now, that a lot of this money went to very few people. In fact, in the first $2 million that's been awarded, there were 35 separate grants that went to 23 different institutions. Now, if you are in the game here, there is $750,000 available that if you can get a good grant in by the May 1st deadline, you can compete for this money. The grants will be reviewed at the July meeting, and then announcements will be made shortly thereafter. So we're really looking for some high-quality proposals, a lot of money, a lot of opportunity to really advance the field. The other thing is that in the original submissions, we would not fund any human work. We believe that it's now ready for human trials, so human trials are fair game for a grant submission. Now, I think, in all honesty, the United States is lagging behind, in many respects, what's going on in South America in particular, and some other areas in general. And NOSCAR is trying to reach out to the other organizations. That's one of the purposes of the July meeting. You'll see a huge international presence. Some of our speakers today obviously are international. We'll share some of that experience. And one of the issues is how to best work together with our international colleagues, and certainly that's something we might want to tackle in the discussion session. Now, the final point I want to make, and I've said this a million times, Rob Hawes has said this a million times, but I can't emphasize how important this is. At this point in time, note surgery is not standard of care or standard surgery, and it must be done with some oversight. And the reasons for it are ethically, you are adding additional risks that you wouldn't have added under normal circumstances. In the States, for medical legal reasons, I can't imagine what would happen were your a patient to sustain a complication or even a death and you had not vetted this through an IRB. I think you'd be toast. I mean, you might even have your license pulled. And then finally, in case you don't know this, you cannot publish this work unless you have IRB approval. The journals will not publish human studies, and when you submit an article, they ask for your IRB approval. They often want to see it. So for all those reasons, as you transition from the lab to human cases, this IRB issue is huge. Now, IRBs vary from one locale to another, and I'm sure this morning when Dr. Swanstrom gives a talk on this subject, he'll point that out. But this is a critical step. It's essential for our patients, and this is the reason, the primary reason that this NOTES group got together, that NOSCAR was formed, was so that if NOTES turns out to be a good access route, good operations, faster recovery, and so forth, it doesn't get shut down because people went off without appropriate oversight, had complications, and there was a public safety issue. So I think that's the dry part of the morning. The rest of this should be much, much more exciting. Thank you.